Previously on the Malazan vlogs. So far so good. Not really much to report on as yet. We're just sort of warming up. We're getting into the story. We're meeting some new characters. In the prologue, we're having a little bit of a flashback historical. We have found some of our old Garden of the Moon characters. I could not be happier. So we've got Quick Ben. Quick Ben has been through an episode here, my goodness. Then we found Whiskey Jack again. In this third chapter we go back to Whiskey Jack, and we've also got Mallet, who's the healer, and we've got Perrin. Perrin's back. Ganos, my suspicions were correct. They've been confirmed. I'm such a happy girl that not only is my favourite character kind of back, but also the character who has this immensely cool name. It's there in the name, Dee. How idiotic can I be sometimes? It's literally there in the name. So there is a connection between what inhabits Silver Fox, who inhabits Silver Fox. So good morning and welcome back, my Malazanites. We have got up to chapter 4, so I'm going to just go quickly and briefly over what we've read so far. You will have seen the previously on, which was my daughter's idea. I think it's brilliant. I think she stepped up to the plate there as editor-in-chief. So we've met new characters and we've gone back to some old characters. We've had a little bit of time in the past. We've learned about some elder gods, Krull, Draconis, and the sister of the Cold Knight, and the history there with Calor and what happened and how they went to release 12 million slaves and that didn't pan out too well. We've also had some time with Gruntle and Hallow and Stoner. We've met the caravan, we've met some of the masters, we've met couple of other characters called Corporal Picker and Corporal, oh, her name escapes me now. Corporal, I keep forgetting this. Corporal, let me check my notes. Where are you? Excuse the noise, the neighbours are still having work done and there's not a great deal we can do about it. If I don't film now, I'd be filming in the evening and that's not advisable. So Corporal Picker and Blend. I keep wanting to say Blade, that's why I'm pausing. Blend. I must make that stick. Blend. So we've met these new characters, but we have crossovers, and I can see future crossovers happening. We have found Tok the Younger, we've found Toll, we've found Lady Envy and her two dogs, who are called, bear with me again, I have these names written down because the names are so unusual, as you all know in Malazan. You have to write them down. So we've got Baljag and Garath, who are Lady Envy's two dogs. So we've met this whole host of new characters. We've gone back to some previous Garden of the Moon characters, which I was ecstatic about. And throughout these different chapters, we've had different adventures. We are concentrating quite considerably on Meeb, or Maib, however you want to say it, who is the mother to Silver Fox, and we've had some revelations there as to who Silver Fox is. What I love about Stephen Erickson's books is there's a hell of a lot of guesswork. He, as my good friend Otto says, he treats you like an adult and leaves it up to you to do the solving of the mysteries, and I do like that context. It's one of the most enjoyable things about Malazan. So we've learnt about the end to the 33rd Jaghurt War. We've learned about the curses between the Elder Gods and Calor. Calor is still around. The point being, we know now that he won't get what he wants because of the curse that's been put on him. We also have other characters as Reese. He's the manservant to Beauchelane and Broach. Yeah, Broach. They're part of the caravan. Sorry if I'm a bit all over. I'm trying to remember and look at my notes at the same time. So we've got a whole host of new characters. We've brought in some wonderful old characters, and we've been to different places, and we've learnt different things. We've got the Panny and Damin, which is what we're now as bridge burners and other clans like the T Sandy and the Tilanimas and the River. We're all coming together for a parley to fight against the Panny and Damin. Don't quite know what the Panny and Damin is just yet, so I am quite asking questions as to who or what that they are. And another question that I have, but I'm going to kind of address it in a way, and this is before we thoroughly get into chapter 4. I have read some of chapter 4, but I just want today got to go back over it so it gets into those little grey cells, as Poirot would say. The question I have is, same as Whiskey Jack has, where is Thelaman Bellenden? Where is Ballerden? He was there when Nightchill passed away, or when Nightchill was close to dying. And then, as we know from Gardens of the Moon, Tattersail had a moment with Nightchill, so that Ballerden could have a moment with Nightchill. But then they got attacked. We know this. This is Gardens of the Moon. So where's Ballerden? So here's my thought process at this moment, and this is how I want to start the morning off before moving on to my on-the-moment thoughts and theories. Is Ballerden part of Silver Fox? Because you think of the timing, we kind of know some things about Silver Fox. You Malazan readers will already know this, who've read Memories of Ice. We know certain things about Silver Fox, and I'm trying not to divulge and spoil it too much. But this is where my thought process is at the moment. Is Ballerden part of Silver Fox? I think so. Then I have some other thoughts. And this relates to Quick Ben. Quick Ben can release up to 7 warrens at one time. Him being a mage, he can release up to 7 warrens at once and control them. So does this then therefore mean that is potentially going to be the same situation with Silver Fox? And is Silver Fox not only going to have potentially 3 mages, 3 warrens or 3 entities, is she going to have a 4th? Maybe. So it's some time later. I have continued to read. I am up to page 157, which doesn't sound a lot, but I've back read just to catch up with where I left yesterday and to make some fresh notes as well. What I found interesting is the sort of footer notes of chapter 4, or head notes if that's what you call them. I'm not sure what you call them. It's kind of where Stephen Erickson writes something like notes or a letter or a poem from someone. And I found that quite interesting, where he's talking about how the curses have affected the elder gods. He goes back to that on this chapter, talking about Sister of Cold Night and Draconis and Krull. He goes back to that and re-goes over their particular curses that they've been inflicted with. So I've made notes of that because I think there's some element of something interesting in there. I think because of the way Stephen Erickson does things, he has little hidden gems, doesn't he, in these little places. So I've made notes of that to potentially go back to and look over again. Then I've also paid more attention to the time of Gruntle in the caravan and his friend Buke, who makes an error with his merchant and gets fired, and he thinks that he's going to have to go back to Darujistan, but Bauchelane and Broach hire him, and this concerns Gruntle because he thinks that Bauchelane and Broach have some sort of sorcery about them, and he watches a conversation between Bauchelane and Buke, and he noticed that Buke seems to be flagging in his personality, kind of slumping, but it looks like it's a I've been taken on, relieved kind of oh, you know, thank goodness kind of slump. And then he has a conversation with him after that over some tea. And it comes to light that Buke thinks that Brooch is the killer. That was around in Godrobe some time ago. And this killer spent 2 weeks where bodies were found every night, mangled and sort of that kind of thing, but murdered. This particular guild called the Vorkins Guild got involved from the council, and they hired assassins to find the killer. And as soon as that was done, the murders stopped. And Buke has this idea that it's Brooch who's the killer. So Gruntle has the thought that Buke maybe wants to kill Brooch, and he's trying to warn him not to do that, as it may cause further problems. Then we learn as well that Stoner seems to have some sort of feelings for Buke, because she's quite intrigued as to what's going on and asking questions. But then there's this other little moment where they're having a little bit of banter. Stoner and Harlow are having some banter, and just after that moment in time, Gruntle and Harlow won't look at each other. They won't give each other direct eye contact. So I have a question there. What's that about? Why won't Gruntle and Harlow look at each other? Is this some sort of imminent romance, or do they have knowledge of something? So I've got a question mark on that too. So then after we've gone through the caravan with Gruntle and the rest of the guys, we then go back to Quick Ben. And Quick Ben is looking for answers in relation to the goddess Burn. And he goes to visit a witch. And it's Witch of Tens. And he starts asking questions, and she's not really divulging the answer to the question as to why Burn sleeps. So he has to ask other questions, such as, you know, if the earth shakes and molten rock pours out like blood when Burn stirs to be awakened, what does that mean? And the answer he's given is that those things maybe don't relate, it's just natural. Those are natural occurrences in the shifts and patterns such as that. But then he asks, why are we slaves then? Are we slaves? And the witch says, no, we do what we want. We make our own choices. And Burn is of this position where if we get it wrong, she can just go over again. So with Burn, it's leading me to believe that maybe she's a character based around something like Mother Earth. Maybe she's kind of this Mother Earth figure, and all that is earthly and, you know, that kind of thing is her domain, and she's in essence tied to the lands. She's part of the lands. So there's another question mark there. There's a lot of question marks when you read it, Malazan. There's a lot of things to question. But I love how there are these mysteries. That's the enticing thing to Malazan, is the mysteries that are part and parcel of what you're reading. But the other thing I have with regards to the witch that Quick Ben is speaking to is that little tiny bit that they have at the end where Quick Ben's about to leave and the witch turns around and says, close the door, I like it cold. Why, if this is an old woman, as Quick Ben questions, does she like it cold? Most old people like it warm. So why does she like it cold? I often tie things like that to meaning there's an essence of evil there. I could be wrong, but sometimes, so in this scenario, I'm thinking, okay, why would an elderly woman who's got this ability to have witchful insight, why would she want to stay cold? That doesn't make sense to me from that perspective, but things like that generally have a little bit of meaning to them. They generally are a little into something. So I have a question there too, but I've not just yet fathomed out why I think that. The only thing I can think of it is it means something potentially untoward, like this witch isn't who she necessarily claims to be, or there's more to her and we've yet to find that out. So after this, then we go back to Quick Ben now joining the bridge burners again. Parran, Mallet, Spindle, those kind of people, and they're about to go to Brood's camp and join Dujek and Whiskey Jack, where they had the parley. So they eventually arrive there, Spindle leading his point on this little procession. And Spindle too has this added element to his warren. So as he's using his warren to protect this little caravan in itself, things are happening with the wildlife and creatures around them. Is this going to portray to something bad or something good? Does this mean that further along in the story, this will have an element of aid, or is it going to be a hindrance to something that the bridge burners are trying to do? So there's that question there in regards to Spindle. But then we go and we meet Whiskey Jack, and we got back to Dujek, and Whiskey Jack takes away Quick Ben and Mallet and Spindle to do whatever they're doing. But then Dujek keeps Paran and wants to talk to him. And this is quite upsetting, but it also gives us the crossover to Deadhouse Gates, which this part I love. This is my favourite, I think, part so far. So we're now at the crossover in timelines. So Dujek is explaining what is going on in the beginning now of Deadhouse Gates. Not to the extent, obviously, as we find it in Deadhouse Gates, but obviously word has travelled to people, and Dujek has now heard word that Felisin is at the mines, and the Otatral mines, and she is somewhat a prisoner. And Tavore, their other sister, is the new adjunct, or adjunct, however you say it. And Paran's taking this information what seems quite lightly, like he's not really bothering him too much. He's kind of giving the impression that he expects it. This is kind of, oh, okay, his father and his mother, you know, they've gone, and he's kind of, yeah, well, I'd kind of expect that if my father wasn't there, then my mother would not be there. So he's kind of got this very, to Dujek, odd response. Dujek was sort of kind of upset about obviously he was upset at the news that he's having to give to Paran, but the reaction he's getting from Paran isn't what he expected. He expected maybe Paran to crumble and break and be like, oh no, and like probably most of us would. But instead, Paran's to kind of take it in his stride. But then he's also self-deprecating to himself, saying, well, if I hadn't done this and if I hadn't done that, this probably wouldn't be the case. And I suppose in his mind, there's some element of truth to that if he hadn't left and he'd stayed with the family and done what was expected of him as sort of next in line to the Paran household, this maybe wouldn't have happened. But I think the inevitability of what the Empress Lysine wants, this would have happened. And you give power to the wrong people and wrong things are going to happen, as is hugely depicted with Felisin in Deadhouse Gates. The power there has gone over has got to people's heads, and they are abusing their position of power. But Tavore, I must say, from reading Deadhouse Gates, is an extremely intelligent woman. She puts herself in a position of power to only what seems benefit the Paran family. And Felisin, in the same hand, seems to do the same thing, put herself in a very sort of twisted position of power, because she does self-hurt in what she's doing, but she does put herself in a position of power. So I'm finding all this extremely interesting. I wish I had a better and wider vocabulary for you guys, but I'm just your average Joe. I use average Joe terminology. So at this point, I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm still trying to figure out, I think there's more to Quick Ben than we're seeing. I think that the Elder Gods have something to do with Quick Ben. I think we're going to find further on in this story that Quick Ben and the Elder Gods have got some sort of crossover somewhere. I think we're going to find that out. And as far as Paran, and he is there by Whiskey Jack sort of speaking to Silver Fox, who we now know is... Spoiler, sorry, if you don't want to hear this, go away now. if you don't want to know, turn off now, because there's no other way of me explaining it. So turn off now. Silver Fox is Tattersail. Tattersail is back. Silver Fox is Tattersail, and as you can see, I'm very happy about that. Tattersail is my most favourite character. So Silver Fox is Tattersail, amongst other things. And Whiskey Jack spots the elements of Tattersail within Silver Fox and wants to know if she would like to speak to Paran. And in ways she does. But I don't know if Paran's going to respond to this too well. We are talking about a 10 to 11-year-old girl, and I should imagine that's going to be pretty hard for a grown man who had a love affair with Tattersail to address this with a girl. So I don't know if that's going to be something he's going to want to do, just purely for how that will come across and look. It's not going to look the best, is it? And that leads to sort of the future. Oh, and there's something else. I've been thinking about this morning. I've been having conversations with my daughter. She's so good. She follows along with everything that says. She's not reading any of this, but she follows along so succinctly. She's amazing. And so we've been talking about Gardeners of the Moon and Dead House Gates, because I waffle on, I rave about what I've read. And she's my voice off, so she does know some of the characters. And I've been talking about Silver Fox and Mabe, and I'm thinking, here's a thought, and I did mention it at the last of my first part of the video. I'm thinking maybe we're going to end up at a point where Silver Fox will reach to the same age as Mabe as she was when she was carrying Silver Fox. And that may be the time when it gets called, and that may be the time when Silver Fox inhabits some of Mabe. That's what I think is going to happen. But I think she may well end up in the same position, or at least something similar to Quick Ben. I have a thought that maybe all the entities that Silver Fox is housing, and I am guessing about Baldwin and Mabe, they're not certainties, but we know of two who are certainties. I'm thinking that maybe she's going to end up very similar to Quick Ben and have, say, an array of warrens. I think maybe these entities might become Silver Fox's warrens and help her along the way. Just because I'm thinking of, Dungeons and Dragons and magic systems and how these games can work, and they can literally be sort of so fantastical. This is where my thought process is going. Same as with Quick Ben. I think he's going to have something to do with the Elder Gods. I also think that Paran is being harmed more than we realise. I think the House of Shadows has got more of a hold on Paran than we actually know. And we're about to find that out too. As for what that is, I'm not sure yet. Same as I'm not sure quite with the witch. But I do think there's something there as well. I don't think that's quite as simple as it seems. So there's questions, and I want answers. So we're going to keep going, and I will be back with you guys soon. So that's me. Till the next one. I had to dive back in again. It's gotten a little bit exciting. We've had a conversation between Dujek and Paran, and we know the situation now with Tavore, Felisin. Now, Paran's gone off on his own, and Whiskey Jack's approached him to have a quick chat. And Whiskey Jack is now approaching him about Silver Fox and explaining to him that it's Tattersail. And Paran is sort of not sure what to do, because he knows that this is a 10 or 11-year-old girl, but still with the woman who he loves inside her. So Whiskey Jack is having a conversation with him and trying to convince him of going to talk to Silver Fox, because they know that there's something not quite right with Perrin. And obviously Silver Fox has all these different entities in her and has the ability to potentially pick up on something that nobody else does. And Perrin's very much aware in this conversation of Quick Ben, who has been analysing him, so to speak, and he knows that Quick Ben has been doing that, and he knows that there's something wrong with him, and he feels that it's to do with the hound's blood that he touched and how he entered the sword. And when he entered the sword, the spirits of the sword and the hounds trapped in there, the souls and the hounds were chained, and as we know, Perrin went in and he freed them, or at least that's what he thinks he did, because they were no longer trapped within this place. So he's basically achieved something, or this is what it's being said, is he's achieved something that nobody's ever achieved. And in doing this, Silver Fox has given him her name. She's given him a different name, and that name is, I did write it down, where I wrote it down. Not there. Where did I write it? I wrote it somewhere. Give me a second. I'm not very prepped, am I, for this? Just give me a sec. I wrote it down. Jen Isand Rull. His name is Jen Isand Rull. That's the river name that Silver Fox has given him, and it means the wanderer. It means the wanderer within the sword. Now, so the sword is the place where the hounds were trapped and there was other souls. So I'm assuming when Anamanda Rake is using the sword, and this was probably explained in Gardens of the Moon, and I may have just missed it, but the sword, when it kills someone, it consumes the soul, and that's the way that Draconis sort of made it. That's what he made it to do, because as we know, the dragon purr is made by the elder god Draconis. This is explained in this book. So we're talking about the Hound of Shadows and Anamanda Rake. And Silver Fox is saying that Perrin is the only mortal or ascendant to have done this. Is that quite right? Am I remembering wrong then, or rightly, that in Gardens of the Moon, Quick Ben escapes the Hound of Shadows, or at least the shadows of some description? Or am I very, very wrong there? I'm quite certain that I remember, because I found that amazing, and I knew at that point that there was clearly something more to Quick Ben than just on the surface of just being this mage. He has something more about him, and as I said before, I'm thinking it relates to the elder gods. I'm also thinking, didn't Quick Ben escape his ties to Anamanda Rake and fool him and free himself, cut his ties, cut his chains? Didn't he do that too? So then clearly Perrin is not the only one who's done it, and Quick Ben also did it, because I'm pretty certain he did. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I'm pretty certain in Gardens of the Moon, Quick Ben relinquished himself from these chains of the House of Shadows, or the Hounds of Shadows. I'm pretty sure he did. I could be wrong though, because fibromyalgia, fog brain, I could be wrong. But this is obviously what's playing and plaguing Perrin, is this touching the stain of the Hounds of Shadows blood and entering the sword and then actually escaping it. Nobody's done that, is what they're saying. Nobody's ever, mortal or ascendant, escaped the dragon purr. Or have they? Let me know in the comments if I'm right or wrong as far as Gardens of the Moon goes, because I'm kind of certain that Quick Ben definitely released some chains that was had on him. He did it in a sneaky way, and he ran before he got caught. So if that is the case, then he's the guy, isn't he? He's got some big parts to play in this series as Quick Ben. And I have to say at this point, if Steven Erikson ever decides that he's in Quick Ben, I'm going to cry, and I'm going to have a tant, and I'm going to have a hissy fit, because not only is Tattersail one of the, like, my most favourite character. Same applies to Tattysale. I love Quick Ben too, so if anything happens to either of these, I'm going to have a hissy fit. I'm going to throw myself on the floor and I'm going to kick my legs and I'm going to scream like as if I was 2 years old. And I don't care who sees me. That's happening. Also, we're at the point where Amanda Rake is coming to Brood's camp. That's going to lead to interesting things, isn't it? It can only get interesting when Amanda Rake's around. So that's me done for another little bit. Let's see where we get to in a moment. I've just finished chapter 4. We have a lot to unravel in this chapter. A lot. Whew. So we finished off with Paran having a discussion with Dujek and finding out about Felasin and Tavor and his mum and his dad. We've now met up with Whiskey Jack and we're discussing about having a conversation with Silver Fox, because Whiskey Jack has the intention of bringing forth Tattysale and bringing her on side. And thinking on it after I've read it and perusing my thoughts a little bit after that, which I have been doing, I'd say for the last 20 minutes, I think Silver Fox, with her entities in her, is also reaching out to her allies, that she wants some alliance from the people who she knew. Excuse me, and she's reaching out in that sense to get them to recognise her and acknowledge who she holds inside and help, basically. So she does want to speak to Paran because there's things that need to be explained. Now, how can I go about this without doing spoilers? So they do have a conversation, Paran and Silver Fox, but at this present moment in time, he's speaking more to Tattysale. And Tattysale is explaining about the cards, the deck of dragons. That's where we end up going into. We have this other conversation about the Rahivi name that she gives him and what it means, the Wanderer of the Sword, or in the Sword. And Paran is very sort of discombobulated, doesn't really understand what all this is about. He's having problems of his own because he's still reaping repercussions from the hound's blood, and he's not quite there. He's not quite with it. So he is trying to understand, but he's also struggling at the same time. So we're getting this very intense. Oh, and in the meantime, what's happened is some of the bridge burners, such as Peck and Blend, and a couple of the others, Spindler included, have moved the table that they were using in the parlay tent, which is like the deck of cards table where they do the gambling and have the games. They've moved it to a tea standy, what used to be like where they'd keep the bodies before they did the rituals and burials. So they've moved it into there for themselves to have a little go at the deck of dragons. But it doesn't work. It doesn't go into detail about explaining what they do and what happens. But it's corrupted somehow. And when they investigate, there is something there. And this then leads to a correlation with the conversation between Paran and Silver Fox. I'm trying to be very careful what I say here. So we have this conversation about the deck of dragons. Now, I initially, in Gardens of the Moon, thought that the deck of dragons resembled similar to tarot cards, and Dr. Philip Chase kind of reassured me in the comments of that video that yes, there is that, but there is more to them. Yeah, there's more to them. Oh my word, is there more to them. You know I do all my videos, off the cuff, flying by the seat of my pants. So I don't really know how to go about going into this, but okay, let me say this. Massive, great big spoiler alert. Huge spoiler alert. You've all been warned. If you have not read Malazan, Memories of Ice, please go do something else now. Turn this video off. You can like it. Please subscribe to the channel. You can do all those things. But I suggest if you want Memories of Ice to be completely spoiler free to you, then turn off now. However, Memories of Ice readers who've read it, please stay, because I'd love to have this conversation with somebody. So the deck of dragons, it turns out that they are actually, so they have houses. They have the house of light, the house of dark, the house of love, dark, light, life and death. Those are the houses of the deck of dragons. But what the realisation is from Silver Fox, Tattersale Sale, is that there potentially were in the past more cards, and there are also potentially more decks. Now, what she then explains is that she believes that the decks relate to houses or hoods, or I've had to write all this down because wow, is that a lot of information. So we start with the word finessed, and in Tilanimas that means hold of ice. Now, does this relate back to the witch somehow? Maybe this relates back to the witch and the cold. Maybe that's a correlation there. I'm not sure. That's still bugging me. The witch and the cold is still bugging me. The witch tends, it's still bugging me. So finessed in Tilanimas means hold of ice. Elder races said a hold was a house, which was also a warren. And then Tremolor in Trellish means house of life. So it's an Azath house in Tremolor is an Azath house in 7 cities. Okay, so let's make some connections. So Tremolor is an Azath house in 7 cities. Right. Quick Ben is from 7 cities. So are we having a connection there? Now, then we move on to Calanved and Dancer. Now we know that Calanved is Shadow Throne. That is where Quick Ben escaped from in Gardens of the Moon. So this escape has happened. As I've read this, I've remembered this escape from these chains has happened with Quick Ben. So I'm absolutely telling you, there is more to Quick Ben than him just being this mage. Way more. I'm absolutely certain of it. And we're going to find out through the series, but I'm absolutely certain there is way more to Quick Ben than him just being a mage. Anyway, let's get back to it. So the Azath house is in the 7 cities, where Quick Ben is from. In Malaz City, there is Dead House, as in Dead House Gates, which is the house of death. Now, Paran, so Paran's reiterating, houses of Azath and houses of the death are one. That's how I wrote it. And Silver Fox replies with, yes, she thinks they're linked. She actually thinks they're linked. So how she is explaining it is that Calanved and Dancer found a way into Dead House. They'd already ascended, so they found a random house where the throne was empty, and Calanved and Dancer took it. Therefore, they then created Shadow Throne, which Dancer is cotillion of, or the rope or patron of assassins. Silver Fox also thinks that Calanved and Dancer did this to be able to get vengeance on Empress Lysine. Well, that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Because she did a number on them guys, so why not do a number back on her? That makes perfect sense. So what Silver Fox is saying is that each Azath is home to every gate and a way to every warren. So you can gain entry to the house and then you may choose. So Calanved and Dancer found an empty house and an empty throne, which was the House of Shadow. Then the House of Shadow appeared and became part of the deck. So in essence, if you find an empty home which has a gate, you potentially can then create a house and add it, it gets added to the deck of cards. Now, what we find out is that through Paran going through what he went through with the Dragnipa sword and touching the blood and entering the sword and coming back out again, he has become a new unaligned card. Do we get that? Okay, so Paran is now this unaligned card. Now, I'm curious, is he related to the drawing that's under the table? Is he related to that? Because it's saying that the man has a wolf on his chest. The actual picture under the table that is similar to a dragon card picture is a wolf on his chest, and Spindler is trying to find some wood and some paint so he can replicate this particular picture. And they've got this plan of adding it to the deck that they have and using it that way, but I'm not so sure that's going to pan out such a good idea, because it's not giving off a very good aura, this card, so not sure that's going to pan out well for Spindler at all. So Paran is now part of an unaligned card, but Silver Fox tells him he now has a quest. He now needs to find this gate that leads to Curled Galen. And Paran himself thinks that that is actually in the sword shadow realm, if that's what I can call it. He thinks that's in the sword shadow realm where the wagon is, which is where he saw all the chained souls. So he thinks that is the way to Curled Galen. And also, Silver Fox thinks that Paran is now the master of the deck of dragons. Okay, there's never been a master of the deck of dragons, but apparently now there is. Now, Paran, through what he's been through and what he's achieved, because he's not mortal, because he's a mortal and he's not ascended, and he's done something that they're saying nobody has ever done before, but I've got my suspicions, because Quick Ben and I don't know about that. Maybe no mortal has done it, but there's something about Quick Ben. Maybe we can make the statements of, yes, no mortal and no ascended has done it. So who is Quick Ben? Who is Quick Ben? Is Quick Ben an elder? Is Quick Ben a reincarnation of an elder? Is Quick Ben actually an elder? Is he Krull? Is he yeah, you know the one I mean. Lady Envy's dad. Is he one of those, and maybe he doesn't remember, or maybe he does know and he's just not saying a word to anyone? I don't know, but I'm very, very intrigued. So yeah, Paran has now got this quest. He doesn't really want to do it, but the fate of the Empire falls on Paran again. Paran has to potentially find this place in order for them to have a better foothold on this war, to be able to overcome the Panian Domin. We don't even know who that is. And then we've got the crippled god, the fallen god. Has that got something to do with these cards? Because if we remember, Munug made cards for the crippled god. He actually, when he was smuggling, or when he was going past Picker and Blend at the checkpoint, and Picker bought the 3 talks off him, they knew there was something else about him, and they led him to believe he'd got away with it, and they, in essence, planted the pebble on him so that Quick Ben could track him. Quick Ben does track the pebble, but he finds the crippled god in the process of tracking the pebble, not Munug. And he has to retrieve the pebble from the crippled god in a way that isn't very pleasant. This is why I said it's like a little tiny fight scene. And that's how he comes across finding the goddess Burn. So it's all going off, guys. But I do genuinely think that we're still, even at chapter 5, and we know how long Malazan chapters are, I still do think even at chapter 5, we haven't got all the answers that we're looking for. We're getting more information about the deck of dragons, which is cool, because I've been hoping for that for quite some time. But I'm still a little bit confused. I kind of understand it a little bit. So if you find a house, it can potentially lead to a gate. I think that's the way around, or a house is a gate. Yeah, I'm still sussing that information out in my head just a little bit. But yeah, Perrin is an unaligned card. And he's now the master of the deck of dragons. I wonder what effect that's going to have on the rest of this book. And whether the T-Standy that are... Tilani Mass that are still out there, who Silver Fox has this connection with. Not the Lorgos ones, not those ones. They're off doing what they're doing with Lorgos. But the T-Standy that are still hunting Jaghurt to see if there's any left, they have a calling to Silver Fox. So at some point, somewhere, she's expecting those guys to show up. It's very interesting, isn't it? It's very exciting. And it's all going off. I still have questions. I still think there's something going on with this witch. You don't make a statement like that for something not to be going on. And I still absolutely believe there's more to Quick Ben. Absolutely. There's something about Quick Ben that we're going to get revealed. I don't know if it's going to be in this book, but at some point, somewhere, in one of the future books, it's going to be revealed that Quick Ben is way more than just a mage. And yeah. And now we've learned how Callanved and Dancer managed to get to the House of Shadow and create Shadow Throne and have vengeance against Lysine. But is Perrin going to be able to find his way to the wagon again? Because surely that means going back into the House of Shadow. And does he want to really do that? I mean, he's now going to have to hide from Anamanda Rake if he's showing up back at the Brood's camp. So he's got to hide from him because he can't give the slightest hint that he escaped or anything to do with the sword, because Anamanda Rake's not going to like that. He's not going to be having none of that. We know what he's like. He don't want anybody touching his sword or having anything to do with it. So he's not going to be happy about that. So yeah, it's all got a little bit crazy days, and I don't know. I'm just intrigued to find out more. So let's carry on with chapter 5. Just had another quick thought. Potentially, I've not even started chapter 5 yet. This is straight after just doing that little bit there. Potentially, now Anamanda Rake is out of Shadow Throne, or out of his Hound of Shadows, that leaves it open for Perrin to go to. I suppose the underlying question is, will Perrin be able to escape again? He's done it once, can he do it again? And is there going to be time for Silver Fox Tattersail to teach him how to wield the deck of dragons? These are questions that I'm still pondering. But anyway, on to chapter 5. Final recant of the day. So we've started chapter 5, which starts with a poem. And my thoughts on the poem are that it is potentially relating to either Carul or the crippled god. I'm not sure, I could be wrong, but that's my thoughts on it. It's maybe to Carul or the crippled god. Then after that we go back to Tok, Tool and Lady Envy and Segula. And we find out that the Lady Envy has a little bit of a twinkle in her eye for Tok. She keeps trying to get him to talk with her and have a bit of banter, so to speak, but he's a little bit frightened of her, a little bit scared, because she's obviously got some sort of sorcery about her. She is the daughter of Draconis, so she has the elder, so she has some sort of sorcery about her. So there's a little bit of funny thing going on there. And then Tool has caught them dinner, which is a pronghorn antelope, whatever one of those looks like. And they're also going to make arrows. Tool is going to teach Tok how to make arrows. And we learn by the conversation that they have around the meal, that Lady Envy at one point actually walked and wandered with Anamanda Rake and Caladan Brood. And there was also a sorceress who eventually ascended to become Queen of Dreams. Now, the Son of Darkness who joined Lady Envy and the Soul Taker known as Osric. Now, Osric hasn't been seen for some time. Osric has disappeared and nobody knows where he's gone. So, I'm not quite sure who that is, but they've disappeared and nobody knows. And Caladan Brood disappeared himself for quite a while. And when he came back, he had a hammer which was given to him by the sleeping goddess. So that's all what happens at the beginning of chapter 5. We learn a little bit more about Lady Envy. And it led me to believe that there's more to her dogs as well. That's where it followed on in chapter 5. So we learn a bit more about the Segulai, who are a warrior tribe, and they are ruled by a champion. And there is one Segulai who has a perfect mask. Now, the Segulai are ranked by the state of their mask. If they've got scars, they are numbered, and the champion has a perfect mask. There's not a single scar on it. But there was a time when Lady Envy was with Anamanda Rake, and they found the Segulai where they live, and they stayed there for some time. And Anamanda Rake became a Segulai and has his own mask. And one of the Segulai with Lady Envy is telling the story of Anamanda Rake and saying that actually he's the 7th. So presumably he has 7 marks on his mask. And she's saying, oh, well, maybe he'll come back for it one day. And Mock turns around and says, no, he has to. He's kind of made this commitment and now has to come back for this mask. So I found that quite an interesting twist on the story of, so will Anamanda Rake ever go back to the Segulai and regain his mask? Will that ever happen? He is Lord of Moonspawn. Why would he deflect from that and go back to the Segulai? But you never know. Stranger things have happened. He might. So we also find out from the Segulai that Antul has a conversation with Senyu, who sort of does all the speaking because he's got the least marks on his mask. He's the one allowed to speak and address people. And we find out through that the Panion are potentially priests. And these priests have gone to where the Segulai are from and tried to convert them to what they want. And now there's this the reason why the Segulai have left their place, because they don't usually, they stay where they are. The reason why they've left is to track down these priests of Panion and fight them, because the Segulai are just basically warriors. That's all they are, they're warriors. So they want to find these priests of Panion and get them to fight and see who comes out the better, I suppose. Because they threatened, once they wouldn't convert, the priests of Panion threatened the Segulai with an army. So the Segulai have sent out their best warriors, and all the others are too immature in their fighting skills. So there is literally just these 3, who are called Senyu, Throughul, and Mock. And when asked how old he is, Senyu says he's actually only 14. And then we get back after that. So I don't really have many thoughts on that other than, will Anamanda Rake ever wear his mask again? And the curiosity about Lady Envy's dogs. The only other thing that I've got questions about is we go back to meet Whiskey Jack. And Whiskey Jack is talking with Mallet and Quick Ben about Parran. And they all seem extremely concerned about Parran. And the decision that Mallet and Quick Ben have come to is that Parran is ascending. His physical being is trying to ascend, but it seems like it's potentially too soon. So because it's too soon, he's fighting it, because some part of him knows that he shouldn't be ascending yet. So he's fighting the ascension, and this is what's making him ill, because he keeps pulling himself back. This is what's making him ill. But they also talk of his time with the Hounds of Shadows and the hounds that he potentially released, because nobody knows where they've gone. They're not even sure if they did make it out, but he did attempt to release these hounds, and he shares a bond with one of these hounds because he touched its blood. So they are now tied. They're magically tied through the touch of the blood. But my question is this: does that relate back then to Lady Envy's dogs, Balaj and Gareth, or Garath? Is one of those, or are both of those, Hounds of Shadow who escaped and have made it out, and all they know is to be around sorcerer and mages and magic? So they've essentially sought out a magical being, a sorceress, and they've found Lady Envy. Is that potentially what's maybe happened, and is that potentially who these dogs are? Because it makes sense to me that they would potentially, once they've come away from that realm, look like any normal dog. And I know Lady Envy's dogs are described as being quite big. So is that who they are? Are they the Hounds of Shadow? And is one of those going to actually be the hound that is tied to Perrin? So that's kind of where I've ended with chapter 5. We've not finished. There's still a lot more to go at. Obviously, Whiskey Jack is concerned about the element of the other being that is within Silver Fox. Whether that being is going to create problems in relation to trying to talk to Tattersail. Is this other essence that Silver Fox has got in her going to cause problems for them trying to talk to Tattersail? She shouldn't, because because this other being is on the same team, so it shouldn't really cause that many problems. The beings that I believe that Silver Fox has got within her, we know she's got Tattersail for a fact. There are what I think is 2 others, and they're all kind of on the same team. This is why it seems to make her a very, very positive adversary for the bridge burners to have. Not adversary, what's the word I want? Comrade, because she seems to have the essence of people that were with those in her. So there shouldn't really be many problems with regards to whose side she's on. But then again, you never know. There could be a spanner thrown in the works and we could find out that she's got somebody else there as well. So that's where we're up to. So there are concerns about this other person that's within the Silver Fox and whether or not they're going to cause problems. And Quick Ben has obviously this other problem on his mind of the goddess Byrne, and he wants to tell Whiskey Jack, but he thinks that the timing's off with everything that's going on with Paran and the parlay and the fact that Anamanda Rake's about to show up. So Whiskey Jack's mind really needs to be focused on that. Quick Ben has kind of decided that he's going to see to Byrne on his own, because let's face it, he fought his way out of Shadow Throne, he conned his way out of there, and even though the crippled god has declared war on gods and warrens and the entirety of everything, it seems that Quick Ben is like, okay, bring it on, let's do this. So I do think that Quick Ben is probably, besides Silver Fox, the only one that has it in him to do that. And that's where we're up to. There is more to go at, but I will carry on with that either later tonight or tomorrow. If you have any thoughts and any comments about anything that I've said, please leave them in the comment section. If you've enjoyed this content, please like. If you want to see more, please subscribe. And we shall continue with this tomorrow. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this. The first vlog has got some interest, which is nice to see. And let's continue on with our Malazan journey. So thank you everyone, and I shall see you tomorrow.